Live stream now. I will now call to order the study session meeting of February 7th, 2022. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held electronically, and members of the council are participating remotely pursuant to the council's electronic participation policy. Public access to the meeting is available on the Local Government Access Channel 8 for Comcast and Xfinity subscribers, on the city's YouTube channel online, and by telephone using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Here.
Councilmember Walker.
Here.
Councilmember Witkovich.
Here.
Councilmember Brown will be absent. Councilmember Jaramillo.
Here.
Councilmember Duran Mollica.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Lukeman Hiramasa.
Here.
Thank you.
Excellent. So Amanda, hello, welcome. So I went sporty for the Parks and Rec night, just for you.
Sounds good. Good evening, Mayor and Council. How's everyone doing tonight? I get 2 items for you this evening. So the first is our Justice Center West Park naming proposal. If you don't mind starting the screen share.
Yep, I'm trying to get to the right page. It's on page 32. This packet was really full with a lot of stuff.
So yes, thanks to Rupa for including all of the history and attachments in there.
Yeah, no, it was great. Really thorough.
All right, there we go. So I'm going to present to you the first part of this, and then I am going to turn things over for a bit to Deja Moore, who is a member of the DICE board, and she will present really the proposal that they brought forward to the Parks Board regarding the naming of Justice Center West Park after Odell Berry. And we can go to that next slide. So the purpose of the conversation tonight really is to present the proposal that was brought forward to name the site that we're currently referencing as Justice Center West Park to Odell Berry Park after former Mayor Odell Berry. Justice Center West Park is not an official name. It's just a reference point. So we had something to call it in the interim while we were doing park development. And you can go on to the next slide. So the city has a really long-standing park naming policy. We haven't used it all that often in the last few years, so I wanted to be able to provide you with a little bit of background and a refresher on what's in that naming policy. It was initially established by resolution in 1986 and was most recently updated in 2009. And that policy grants the responsibility to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to accept written naming proposals, to seek public input. It requires that they wait for a 90-day evaluation period between the time that a proposal initially comes in and the earliest point that they can take action on that proposal. And their role really is to hear all of that information and then to make a recommendation to City Council regarding the proposal that was brought forward. And you can go on to the next one. Some of the guidance that's provided within that naming policy, it does give consideration to agreements with other entities. So for example, if there was a relationship with, say, the school district, or there was joint use agreements in place, it does allow for that consideration to be given. It limits the renaming, really aims to, once a park is named for someone in particular, that it stays that way. It's not intended to be changed on with any regularity. And it states that the contributions of an individual who has a park or a facility named after them should be extensive and substantial. That policy also lays out the council authority, which is to take official action via resolution the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board provides a recommendation. You can go on to the next slide. So the proposal that came forward was to name the Northglenn Justice Center West Park after former Northglenn Mayor Odell Berry. That proposal was submitted by the Diversity, Inclusivity, and Social Equity Board. It was presented by Sarah Woodson, the DICE Board's vice chair, and was initially heard at the June 10th, 2021 Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting. It included a list of Odell Berry's contributions to the community and some support for that naming to take place. And with that, before we talk any further about the naming proposal or process, I'm going to turn things over to Deja, who will share a little more information with all of you about DICE and the proposal that they brought forward. So Deja, it's all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. And hi, Northglenn City Council members. I'm so glad to be here, and I hope you're having a good time, and happy Black History Month as well, with it being February. But I do want to just give you a presentation that, I worked with Sarah and also Rupa on, just to really show the need for this ask for this park, and then also why we're trying to honor Odell Berry. And so just to kind of guide us in the purpose of DICE, as you all created this committee and our board, again, just to relate, is we really are here to help review current and proposed policy in relation to DEI. We're also here to provide recommendations to you all on how to promote DEI, and then working with other boards in the city to ensure that we are promoting DEI as well. So that's why we are here before you today. And I just want to go into just our board goal real quick with you. So in August of 2020, and it's been like a year, and I would say like 5 months, so a year and a half really, what we looked at as a board is we saw that we wanted to see more of ourselves within the community. I think there's a lot of representation of our culture, but at the same time, what we've seen is typically white and cisgender men and women have typically been honored, especially in this city and in terms of awards. And so as far as this gap that we see when it comes to folks of color, we do think it's really crucial as a city, if we are moving in an effort towards DEI, that we honor more folks of color that have made great contributions to Northglenn, and especially spread the history of our place. Right now, I'm sure many of you know critical race theory is, stigmatized. And I think it's so important that our youth understand our racial history in America and in Northglenn. And so that's what we are coming to you all before to talk about that as well. And we did develop a list of folks specifically of color that we think have made great advances. And I want to talk more about that. But with our honor, with our recommendation, amongst many folks that we came up with on our list, and I can share that as well with you, we ultimately came down to the decision of Odell Berry. And it's because of many of his contributions to not only the city of Northglenn, but also the state of Colorado. So he served as a Denver Broncos player. He was also director of the Northglenn Rec District. He served on council. He's even created the largest Dairy Queen in the state, and even was a partner at a real estate firm. And then furthermore, too, he was the first African-American mayor, of Northglenn, just even of a major city in Colorado. He's established a master plan for the city, which involved the 80 million water project. He's also served on the Colorado Economic Development Committee, which helped form our Major League Baseball team, the Colorado Rockies here in Colorado. He was also committee chairman for Empower Field at Mile High, and he's also a member of the Denver Broncos Alumni Association. So this man has really done incredible work, not only just for our city, but also for the state of Colorado and our youth. And I think it's so important that folks really know who he is and the strides he's made. And to also show, I know the city has made past honors to him. So in 2008, Mayor Novak made a proclamation in honoring him with the day to credit his contributions. And then in 2019, Mayor Dodge also had a proclamation to congratulate him on all of his contributions to the city. And then in this year and last year, basically our board also wants to honor him with a place named after him, so folks won't forget him. And with his recent death too, I do think it's so important that our youth know who he was, because he made significant contributions. And so I want to talk about just our process with this, because, in case folks may think this was kind of a new idea, it really wasn't. This is something that we've started since our board has been developed. So I worked with Sarah to interview former Mayor Berry. during Black History Month, and we were not able to because of his worsening health condition, unfortunately. And so last year in March, we actually talked with his family about potentially having an honor, such as a park, that would really continue his legacy. And so from there, that's where Sarah really worked with Amanda to submit a letter, right, to Parks and Rec Advisory Board. And then the advisory board told us that we had to wait 90 days to allow for public to make comments and suggestions in regards to this recommendation, and also maybe provide different alternative suggestions that they have for this park as well. And so we waited those 90 days, and then we came before you all again because we had the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board's approval for the park naming request in September. And so where this put us at recently in the last couple months is we sent the request to you all, and then you all stated that you did want a study session as of November to hold in February. And so this is where we are essentially, is tonight we're here to recommend him, and again, further talk about just his contributions and any, I guess, any drawbacks maybe you all have about this. And so to talk more about just the location, so it is referred to as Justice Center Park. So this is just a visual cue of what it looks like right now, and it is adjacent to the Northglenn Justice Center.
Amanda, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I'll pass it off to you, sorry.
Before I take it back, no, that's okay. You can keep going if you'd like. You can present the rest. If we want to pause for a moment, if there are any questions for Deja, or I think I saw Sarah Woodson on as well as some other members of the DICE board. Would you like to take any questions from them before we proceed with some of the details about the park and the process?
Yeah.
I think we can move through the presentation if Deja and Sarah will stay on, and we'll get to the questions at the end.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
Sounds great. So Deja did this slide for me. I think everyone is familiar with the space, but this is the location. We acquired the property from the Berry family in 2016. It was appraised for a range of $385,000 to $410,000, and we made that purchase for $420,000. We were able to go a bit above that, that appraised value with Adams County open space dollars. So that grant paid for about 60% of that property acquisition, which really made that achievable. As a part of that, because we used grant funding to secure that property, it does have a conservation easement on it that requires that that space be used for parks, open space, or other eligible uses. When we first acquired the property, there was a house on it. It has since been demolished and the property cleared. And as, again, most of you know, we allowed for Adams 12 to use that property as a staging area for their fiber project, knowing that those had benefits to all of our community members who have students in that school system. You can move on to the next slide. So a little bit about the future park development. And although this may not directly impact the naming of the space, I wanted just to give you an update and give you some context here. So the initial design was complete and included parking per the feedback we received from council when we were finalizing that design. We also received feedback from council during the strategic planning process for the desire to have a teen adventure zone space. And we think that this is a great area to be able to incorporate that. Those elements aren't yet in the construction design documents, but will be selected with youth and teen input and integrated into those design documents prior to construction. We did include the intent to have that teen adventure zone as a part of our Adams County grant request this year. So we've started that process of integrating that into the space. This is the artist rendering of the park. It doesn't have all of the detail there because it is simply a rendering, but really gives you an overview of the space with parking, access along 112th, a variety of trails that go through, and then different play spaces and gathering spaces that exist throughout the space. You can move on to the next one. So construction funds for the park, we've done the design, it's mostly complete. We need to build in that teen adventure zone, but we haven't identified funds specifically for construction of that park. So at this point, we are estimating that construction cost to be around $5 million. And that's with a healthy contingency included. We have secured $1.5 million from Adams County Open Space during the fall 2021 grant cycle. So that's relatively recent, which was exciting. But we still need another $3.5 million to begin construction. We had made an ask through the congressionally directed spending. And unfortunately, that request did not get funded this round. There are some potential funding sources for developing that remaining portion of that construction budget, whether it be the city's budget and the general project or the general fund or capital projects fund, or additional grants outside of Adams County Open Space, outside of that congressionally directed spending ask, through DOLA, through Great Outdoors Colorado, through private foundations. And so we would propose that throughout 2022 and early 2023 that we're really finalizing that budget plan, putting together a schedule that looks at when all those grant deadlines are over the course of this year, what are likely appropriate funding sources that we feel confident that our project matches the dollars that are available, and bringing that budget forward to you during the 2023 budget development process. You can go on to the next slide. So kind of circling back to where we started the presentation, per the park naming policy, it's the responsibility of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to make a recommendation to you regarding those proposals that come forward. So in this instance, the proposal to name the park property currently referenced as Justice Center West Park, Odell Berry Park, was approved unanimously by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board on September 9th. They completed the 90-day evaluation period. They allowed for public comment, and they confirmed that they felt that the contribution that Odell Berry had made to the community qualified as extensive and substantial. You can go on to the next slide. So that really kind of brings forward the action on that recommendation. So the DICE board brought the initial recommendation forward. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board went through the process and recommended to move forward per the recommendation. And that gives council the next step of affirming or denying that through council resolution. So staff has identified 4 options that council would have. 1 is to approve the naming request as proposed. 2 is to ask staff or DICE board or Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for additional information. 3 would be to deny the proposed naming request. And 4 would be other as developed through your conversation tonight. And you can move on to the next slide. So what we are asking for tonight really is 2 questions. 1 is, how does council wish to proceed regarding the naming proposal? You wouldn't be taking action tonight. We'd simply be looking for consensus on one of those 4 options. If you were to choose to support the recommendation as proposed, we would bring that forward in as a resolution for your consideration at an upcoming city council meeting. And then the second item we're looking for some feedback on tonight is is council supportive of a funding plan to be developed through the 2023 budget process, looking at grant opportunities in 2022, trying to identify how much of that remaining $3.5 million we believe is reasonable and realistic to secure through grant funding, and what portion of general funds may be included in the 2023 budget to help kind of fill that gap. And with those grants, really that timeline is dependent on specific grant funding cycles, and to be realistic, that sometimes it takes more than one ask before those are funded, especially when we're seeking a large dollar amount, like $3.5 million in this case. So with that, I will open it up for council discussion on those 2 items, or any clarification or questions that you have of either staff or the DICE board members that are here tonight.
Okay. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't particularly have questions, but I wanted to add a little bit, since I did attend the funeral for Mr. Berry. I also wanted to add some things that that we might take into consideration. That the governor of the state of Colorado was there and spoke. And I have a quote of his that said, "Every person in the state of Colorado's life is bettered because of the work of Odell Berry." Former mayor of Denver, Wellington Webb, was there, and he also spoke. We had several two Broncos players from the Alumni Association. There were representatives from the Black Caucus, from our state legislator. Representative Joe Nagoose was there and spoke. Let's see, Earl Perlmutter was also there, and then proclamations were sent from Diana DeGette and Mayor Hancock. So most of the other things we'd heard from Deja about, but I did wanted to mention all of those things, and that the fact that not only do I support this, but I also am kind of disappointed that we weren't able to approve this the first time it was brought to us, so that Mr. Berry could have known that this was happening. And I also just want to close with a quote in case people are still thinking, well, maybe he doesn't qualify by doing enough. And so I'm going to read you this quote. "Success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome while trying to succeed." And this quote is from Booker T. Washington. And I do believe that Odell Berry had a lot of obstacles to overcome to be the one and only mayor we've had in this city that is a person of color in all the years that the city has, been in existence. And I know he had a lot of obstacles to overcome, and I believe that this honor is long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Duran Mullica.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So a couple questions that I have, and really the way I'm going to start my conversation is I think Odell Berry is well deserving of this park. I mean, there's like a whole presentation dedicated to like this whole thing. This is great. Okay. But what I want to do is actually ask questions about the process. And so I think those would go to Amanda or Heather, because I just want to make sure that our process is good. I believe this is my first time naming a park, which I think is a really, really big deal in our city, given the fact that we don't have lots of parks left to name. And we have lots of great people to put their name on them, right? And so the reason why I'm really passionate about this topic is because, we have great spaces that are named after mostly lots of great men. And I know personally, I've been able to work with some pretty amazing women who've also had influence in the city, great women mayors, not just, saying that to flatter you, Mayor Leidy, but, there's some great women leaders as well. And I want to make sure that our process is good to make sure that hopefully on this next term that they get a chance to be represented as well. So a quick question. So thank you, Amanda, for going through that process for me in the slides. So how are names solicited? Like, how does the public know to submit names to the Parks and Rec Board? How is that advertised?
So it really is not a process that, at least to this point, we really have solicited. If someone brings a proposal forward, then it is brought through that process. I think that would be different if we were at a point of building a new park, which at the time this came forward, we were in the early planning stages still. We don't have money for construction, so we hadn't yet gone out to the public and said, what should we name this park? So this proposal came forward in advance of that type of action. In the past, we have had some parks that have been named purposefully for, and this was kind of before my time, but by knowledge of the history, is that they were named purposefully for vague geographic locations so that they could be renamed. And so they gave an opportunity to name those spaces when a name came forward, rather than making a decision in the moment that the park was developed. So the three most recent would be North, Central, and South Park in Shockshrun, which don't have very inspiring names, and that's intentional, or that was intentional at the time, so that they left those spaces open for naming. And So we have a few spaces throughout the city at this point that are named for geographical location that could be and have been that way for more than 10 years. So they would be eligible for renaming if something came forward. So if someone came forward with an unsolicited proposal and said, he would really like to name Central Park after this person, it would be available. If we were developing a new space like Justice Center West Park, in all likelihood, before we went forward with that, that's where we would have solicited name options or proposals.
Okay, so we did solicit name options for this particular park. It wasn't just an unsolicited proposal. Oh,
correct. We weren't there yet.
Okay.
We would have waited until we had funding to actually construct it.
Okay, all right. So then that probably answers my next question, is how many names were submitted to Parks and Rec for consideration for this? And it sounds like it was probably just the one because it was an unsolicited proposal.
That is correct.
That helps me. Okay. And then, so then the process says there's a 90-day public comment period. How is that advertised to people? And were any public comments received for this name?
Yes. So it was included in the Northglenn Connection. It was included on each of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board agendas as an agenda item, so that it appeared in multiple places and was a placeholder on that agenda for public comment. And we did receive several letters. I believe they're in addition to the initial proposal from the DICE board, which had multiple supporters, received, I believe it was 2 additional letters. I put those details in the memo, but I can't remember off the top of my head. One of which was interpreted to be fairly neutral, didn't really state direct support or opposition. The other was a voicemail and stated very clear support for the naming of the park. When we went for grant funding, we also put out another request for support for grant funds at that point. But many of the letters we received back were actually in support of the naming of the park after Odell Berry, just as much as they were for the support for grant funding to be awarded.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that I would like to see just moving forward is, you know, how can we have a better structured process about naming parks? You know, whether they're going to be brand new ones or for existing ones, you know, how does an individual know that they could go forth and do an unsolicited proposal? How do we engage community more with naming parks? You know, I feel like just like a stronger process would make me feel better about just moving forward and how parks are named throughout the city. And really those were my questions, just process questions at this point. Thanks.
Thank you.
Does anybody else want to weigh in?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, definitely. Odell Berry, Mayor Odell Berry is definitely, you know, deserving and well overdue for having his name as featured in a park here in Northglenn. But when I go back to funding, I think a great opportunity came up when Councilmember Goff mentioned, we mentioned private foundations. You can look at partnerships with the Broncos Alumni Association. Perhaps they would want to collaborate, and possibly even support from politicians in Denver and throughout Colorado at all levels, past and present. I don't know if like that would help at all, but I mean, that's just a thought, since feels like he's definitely Odell Berry made a great impact throughout Colorado and, you know, in different areas too. So I think maybe that'd be some kind of partnership we can create.
Thank you. Councilmember Witkovich.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Amanda. I got to be kind of part of these conversations as I'm the Parks and Rec liaison. So, you know, I witnessed the whole process, and I heard all the support that Amanda spoke about. And I definitely believe that former Mayor Odell Berry is deserving of this recognition. And I would definitely be all for option one, approving the proposal. I do agree with pretty much everything that Julie mentioned as well about suggestions for refining the process. Those are all great ideas. But I'm on board. And then I also support the funding plan to be developed through the 2023 budget process. Thank you.
Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also support option one, and as well as the 2023 budget process in terms of funding the park, as well as echoing Councilmember Duran Mullica's comments and suggestions for future naming processes. I think we're certainly, I would expect that in the future, we're going to see more naming requests, especially with, our beautiful new recreation center, as well as theater and senior center. And the reality that we do have an incredible community of folks that serve and folks that like to give back. And so I do think whether it's a study session or a discussion item on a future agenda, I definitely think it's time to relook at this policy and make sure that it fits really well with where we are as a community right now. Thank you for bringing this forward. I'm excited about it.
Thank you. So I wanted to kind of address, I know, Catherine, I'm going to go next and then I'll call on you. We'll do first round and second round. I do see your hand. So I want to comment a little bit on what Councilmember Goff had said and also echo what Councilmember Duran Mullica said. So I don't believe this process was delayed because there were any concerns about the quality of the candidate. I think it was about the process. And also because it is a park that is not funded nor in construction. It was something that could be looked into, and we did have adequate time. When it came forward to us the first time, I'm going to be very honest, I felt like the proposal was only because of the color of his skin. And I felt like we needed to have more information. That doesn't mean that that's not a good reason. I just didn't want it to be the only reason, and I didn't want that to be the perception. The packet of materials that we have is so much more thorough than we were given before. The qualifications and the contributions to the city are just more in depth, and I'm even more in support of this idea. I also attended the funeral, and I think one of the things that was sort of missing from a list of his accomplishments was the impact he had on people. And so when Councilmember Goff spoke to all the people that spoke at his funeral, that makes him sound popular. However, what they said was more important than the fact that they attended the funeral. What they said when they took the microphone was how he had impacted them and grew them as leaders that are now shaping our state. He had a much broader reach and a much broader impact than I even knew. So it's those personal stories. And I think when we go, I think that's why I go back to the process needs to be refined. And so I do support a study session that will bring that whole policy back. So we have revised it in the past. I think it's time to do it again so that it's not just simply the first person that says, hey, I want it to be this person, or hey, I want it to be me. Like whoever volunteers, if it goes through a process like this pretty quietly, because it's a pretty quiet process, we want to make sure that we're having the right conversations to make sure that it's the right candidate. In the end, I believe this is a very good idea, and I do support option one. I happen to love all of Jay's suggestions. I think he was spot on when you look at that list of organizations that were celebrating him. I think that's a great idea. I think reaching out to Damon would be a really good idea as well. He has the contacts and the connections, and he can bring that group together to help with the funding for this. I think it should still be named regardless, but as far as when the project gets to start is, we're waiting on the funds. So I thought all of those ideas were great about how to kind of reach into more pockets, more diverse pockets than just grants and just our general fund. But I think it's a great idea. So here we are. Councilmember Goff?
Thank you. I'm just never sure if the hand stayed up from before or what, so sorry about that. I just wanted to add on, because as Jay was talking, that made me think another accomplishment of Mr. Berry was that he was a charter member and once president of the Northglenn Rotary Club. And so that group might also be interested in helping with some fundraising. And then in terms of an outreach effort that Council Member Mullica and Wilford brought up, well, and you as well, is that I know we do a resident survey. I'm not sure if it's every year or whatever, but I just wondered if maybe there could be some questions on something like that would go out to a lot of people to ask them, do you have any, do you know of, who do you think has had the greatest impact in the history of Northglenn or something along those lines? I'm not the wordsmith for that. But that might be a way to at least generate a list and have more than just, and the diversity board, I mean, we're more than welcome to consider, and we did look at, possibilities of, other diverse members that might be representations of other groups that might be a good candidate. But Odell Berry just jumped right to the top of the list. I mean, everybody knows him, it seems like, in one form or the other. So, those are my two suggestions. And I do support option one.
Deja, did you want to add something?
Yeah, and Councilmember Duran, I was going to say too, so amongst Odell Berry, we thought of many folks, as notable contributors. One, Amanda Peterson, which I know, she's been working with us, but she's served Northglenn since 2001. That's 21 years of service. And I did see her recently get commemorated, right, at, the rec center opening. And I thought that was so beautiful. I'm a feminist at heart. A lot of other folks that I thought of, Michael Stricker, who served Northglenn since 2008, Debbie Tuttle since 2011, Mayor Joyce Downing, who has also served as mayor from 2009 through 2017, and also Ward 2 from 2017 through last year. Mayor Leidy, you as well. I think you have honored our community, since 2017. I think that's been amazing. And just all of you as city council members as well. And when it comes to our BIPOC contributors, we did think of Mayor Berry. I thought of Mayor Pro Temp Antonio Escobar as well, as a Latino man who has served since 2015, 6 years. I thought of you, Duran Mullica, really since you've served also as a Latina for the community, but also since 2017, and also our youngest Latina council member, Jordan Sowers, also from 2015 through 2019. So we all have thought of numerous folks, and I think, the contributions you all have made have been amazing, and I'm not discrediting that at all. What I am saying, though, is I do think history is so critical for our youth. And if youth are able to see the past, they also see the future and where we are going and why we need to go in the direction that we do. I do recognize that Odell Berry is a man and of color. And I do think it is time for a woman, specifically of color, to be honored and recognized. And as Amanda has already alluded to, there are many parks that are still available for potential naming requests. And so this is not the sole one. I do think this will make a major ground, and going forward, I think that could be a new recommendation, is to nominate a woman of color that we feel has made a definite contribution to Northglenn. And I would not be opposed to that at all.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's a really good reminder that Odell Berry was not the only mayor of color. Mayor Escobar did serve as mayor. We've heard from almost everybody. Do any other city council members want to weigh in? It looks like we have somewhat support for option one. Councilmember Walker, Lukman Hiramasa, do you want to weigh in? Yeah? Go ahead, Shannon.
Sorry, I have a puppy in the background, so I was trying not to talk too much. It's being really wild right now. I absolutely want to voice my support. I definitely believe that this is just a really wonderful way to honor him. I did attend the virtual memorial for him and absolutely learned a lot of things that I didn't know. So I'm 100% in support of that, as well as, looking at the 2023 budget to figure out ways to fund that. Along with all the great ideas that were put out there for maybe getting some unique funding for that. I think that's pretty much it. I'm also in support of a future study session because I had no idea, of course, how the naming process would happen. So I absolutely support that and think it would benefit all of us moving forward for future park naming requests and whatnot. But thank you, Deja and Amanda, for that great presentation. Squeaky toy in the background. I'm going to mute myself. Sorry.
Thank you. Councilmember Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I support option 1 wholeheartedly and also looking into the budget options for 2023.
Okay, we've heard from everyone. So thank you to Deja and Sarah. I did see another DICE board member pop on as well. So thank you for your time tonight. And thank you for all of that work putting this together. It was a really nice packet filled with quite the honor. It was beautiful to read, so thank you. All right, Amanda Peterson is still with us for the next item, the rec center pool schedule. I will pull up my screen.
Wonderful.
All right.
All right. So this one, I have some support here as well. I'd like to introduce Justin Perdue. He is our recreation manager for active recreation. One of his responsibilities is the pool area, along with all of the staff who are working in that space. So I'm going to kick things off, and then I'm going to turn some pieces over to Justin to present to you tonight. You can go to the next slide. So the purpose tonight is to provide information in response to a council inquiry that we received regarding the current schedule for the indoor pool at the recreation center, and be able to provide you with some upcoming schedule modifications. We can move on to the second slide. And here's where I'm going to pass it off to Justin, and he'll go through most of the next slides with you until we reach the discussion point. So Justin, it is all yours.
Thank you, Amanda. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Happy to be here tonight to provide you all with some additional information as it relates to our pool schedule for the Recreation Center. So as you know, we've been in kind of a transition phase and getting our feet wet, literally and proverbially, but better understanding the needs of our operations, including that of aquatics. So today we'll jump into a few different facets, all related to developing that pool schedule. So here on this slide, we've identified really an overview of our aquatics programs. And in the memo, it outlines some of these, but to give you an overview, Open Swim really being that drop-in time where members and guests can play, swim freely on all the amenities that we have available at that time. Lap swim is when we have dedicated times with those lap lanes up. People are able to, once again, drop in and swim and or water walk from one side of the pool to the other. Water fitness classes are structured classes in the pool for adults of any age with the goal of promoting both mental and physical health. Swim lessons are registration-based classes for our youth population where they receive formal instruction from a swim instructor with the goal of developing swimming and water safety skills. The swim club is another successful program we've had. It's registration based and there's formal coaching involved where our youth participate in practices and even competitions throughout the week and entire year. And then the last one identified here is pool parties or private rentals, something that is a little bit new for us, but a service that we now have available where people can reserve a private party room and also gain access to the pool either during pre-established times or even after hours. So I give you that that overview as just some context for those pieces that come together as we develop that schedule. And then additionally on this slide, you can see some of the other things that we consider. So we've got a good number of programs and services that we're trying to balance in creating the schedule. We also have these pieces identified. One being safety. We always want to ensure our patrons and participants are safe. It is of the utmost priority for us. And that involves following established industry standards, ensuring our staff are certified and trained properly in order to effectively respond in any situation, including those, God forbid, emergencies. So as part of this, it's imperative for us to schedule staff in a manner in which we can provide that adequate coverage and oversight to the pool itself. This piece also trickles a little bit over into our financial responsibilities in that we want to be good stewards of our resources. And that involves the appropriate scheduling of staff based on the approved budget that we have, and striving to meet our revenue and participation goals, for all of those areas. Additionally, we feel it's extremely important to continue to ask ourselves, what are the community needs? And how can we best meet those needs while providing the right amount of balance among all of those previously identified areas? And to obtain that information, we're committed to collecting information and data through surveys, comment cards, informal conversation, gaining some of that anecdotal feedback, while we also track participation and utilization of the facility. And through the assessment of those pieces of information, we can then develop and tailor a schedule to hopefully best meet the community needs. So you can go to the next one. Thank you. So there are some challenges in doing this. It's definitely not a perfect system by any means to create that well-rounded schedule, but we are doing our best to meet those needs and wants. And as I mentioned, we're capturing a significant amount of data to help guide us. And we see the demand for those different services and programs ebb and flow. But as we do that, we evaluate whether or not a modification to the schedule is needed. That could vary by season. That could really vary by the other programs that we could offer in a given season, such as the summer when we have an alternative outdoor option in the Kiwanis pool available to us. But we can't always have multiple programs running at the same time as each other, so running concurrently. And that's due to the space required for a given activity, but also our current staffing levels and having the appropriate number of staff scheduled at a different time. So as you can see in the next slide, just outlines our staffing level as we currently exist, what's budgeted for those lifeguards and swim instructors, and really where our vacancies lie. It is important to note that we do have some of those other aquatics positions, our swim coach, the aquafit instructors, that is fully staffed. So really where the gap is in those lifeguard positions and swim instructor positions. But even though you see that number, I think it's also important to note that our vacancies of 5.14 FTE does not mean 5 people. It really could vary depending on what availability staff have, those candidates have upon hire. So it could result in anywhere from 10 to 15 people. Go to the next slide, please. So we continue to evaluate why we're not able to, why we haven't been all that successful in attracting new lifeguards, in recruiting those lifeguards to adequately staff the pool and run the programs that we'd ultimately like to. And there's a few reasons that we believe the pandemic is certainly a factor. We've not been able to hire and retain staff over the last couple of years in the same way as we were prior to the pandemic starting. And over the last several years, the popularity of being a lifeguard has decreased. It's a position with a lot of responsibility and one that requires some significant training. Further, there's many other job options for the youth, which is really that target demographic historically. So those high school and college age students that lifeguarding has historically attracted, they're not necessarily as interested as they once were. Other challenges with that population is that their schedules change seasonally due to other obligations and priorities, such as sports or extracurricular activities, that sort of thing. In addition, we've also seen that those lifeguards age out of the role as they move on to other opportunities and other kind of time periods of life, such as college. But this challenge is not unique to Northglenn. It really is a nationwide shortage in the parks and rec industry. We've heard it time and time again from all sorts of organizations and agencies throughout the country. Other aquatic facilities have been forced to adapt and adjust their schedules as a result, decreasing or modifying their hours, really paring it down, but still trying their best to provide all that really the demand is. So despite there being that challenge, we've tried to implement some different strategies to help mitigate the effects. One of them is that slide attendant position that we've created. There's no certification that's required for that. It truly is an attendant being at the top of the slide and dispatching somebody in an appropriate time. So just a little bit of training and overview of the amenity, and somebody could jump into that role. We've also moved to a shallow water lifeguard option, where if somebody doesn't meet the prerequisite requirements of that quote full lifeguard, we give them the opportunity to become a shallow water lifeguard, where the requirements, those prerequisites, are not as rigorous, in hopes that they could pass that and then progress through after a little bit of training, potentially some increased fitness levels, where they can pass that full lifeguard course. Waiving certification fees, and paying more than nearby agencies in hopes that we are going to attract additional candidates to work for us. And I can tell you that with that $15 minimum wage piece, I know that there are some other agencies throughout Colorado working towards that. You know, us being there is definitely an advantage, but we're still not seeing that increased recruitment and resulting in being able to hire additional staff. Some additional possibilities we have been discussing and exploring is the potential for hiring a candidate and really paying for their time to go through the course itself and becoming that lifeguard if they agree to work for us. So something that we've just kind of tossed around at this point, not moved anywhere on. But you know, if you have ideas, we definitely would love to hear from you on ways that we can better recruit. But we'll get to that. The opening schedule, if you move to the next slide, and really the next few slides showcase the schedule that we put in place upon opening the facility. And then the next one is where it stands currently, and then where it's going to be over the next couple of weeks. We've changed this schedule already from opening due to some immediate feedback that we received from the community, as well as just not having a sufficient number of lifeguards to adequately staff all of those services that we had earmarked the time for. And really that effect was making sure that we offered a little bit more open swim during those afternoon and early evening hours, and taking away the afternoon swim lessons as a result. So you can see that on this slide from the opening schedule to the current schedule on the next slide. So this one being where we expanded some of those weekday open swim hours and took away those afternoon, early evening swim lessons. And in the next one, we have a proposed schedule, one that we're looking to move towards, and it is an expansion. So definitely a positive there. We are looking to maintain some of that weekday open swim, but still while expanding the weekend open swim, specifically on Sunday mornings, where we have 2 additional hours, expanding it from 10 a.m. instead of the 12 p.m. right now. And then on Saturdays, it is an additional hour at the end of the open swim, the current open swim time frame. So what are our next steps? Things that we're looking to move toward. I mentioned the immediate next steps, the additional weekend open swim hours. We're looking to continue to recruit and train new lifeguards. And some of the ongoing pieces that we're committed to doing is really pivoting and adapting all of our strategies. We definitely want to hear different feedback. So we're soliciting that through surveys and really ongoing conversation with the community. We definitely want to listen to hear what those needs are and then pivot accordingly, like I've mentioned before. The expansion of hours that we are looking to make, even from the new schedule that we're proposing, is where we could potentially use the activity pool and the lap pool during open swim, allowing for a larger space to be available. Once again, it's pending staffing levels. We'd love to offer larger body of water where it can trickle over. People kind of ebb and flow back and forth, utilize the slide, the activity pool, and that lap pool during that open swim time. Certainly the summer will be here before you know it. Hopefully we can recruit some seasonal staff to adequately staff that pool. And we'll have some different options, some varied options with both pools kind of complementing one another. But we will continue to monitor program services by tracking the utilization, tracking that participation, soliciting feedback, and gathering any other pertinent information that can help guide us. So with that, we'd love to ask, is council comfortable with the approach we're taking? Is there any additional feedback council would like to provide? And can we answer any other questions that you might have as we discuss this further?
Thank you, Justin. I'm going to start because I was wondering about the piece, the changes that were made. I guess I'm confused. I'm going to stop share. But so a couple things that are in my head as concerns. I understand staffing is an issue. I guess I would love to see what the schedule could look like if it was fully staffed. I mean, I would just like to see what the potential would be. So if you had everybody, what could you do? I guess I'm concerned because I don't feel like feedback that you've been given so far is reflected in the proposal. So a lot of the feedback that has been coming through council members from residents is that it doesn't, that there's no evening hours for open swim. So when we think about our working families that, they work all day, they pick their kiddos up from daycare, they grab something to eat and they want to go swimming. I mean, I'm telling you, when I had little kids swimming at like 6 to 8, they went right to bed. It was lovely. They're exhausted. And that was the sweet spot at my house. I mean, sometimes I didn't pick my kids up until 6. So by the time we got to the pool, it was 7. There's no option at all. And those are the families that have been reaching out. They're like, hey, it closes too early. I can't use it. And I feel like this didn't really address that. And I know that feedback has come, at least through me to Heather, to you, I'm assuming. So I just didn't know about that. Again, I'm a little concerned about the later weeknight open swim is being held for the summer because, and I don't know if this has happened before, but I know how teenagers think. They would prefer to work at Waterworld outside with 5 million of their friends coming through every day than inside a small rec center. So you're either going to have a hard time recruiting or you're actually going to lose staff. So I'd really like to hear some creative solutions for how we can not only retain or not only get, but then retain. Like, how do we get them to stay and really, feel a part of it? And I mean, because teenagers work and they are working for social interaction, 75% of them, whether it's McDonald's or Starbucks or Walmart, they are trying to create another social circle. So to work in such a place where the staff is really small and a good portion of them are adults, it's not as appealing. So there has to be something to work through there. But I've gotten lots of feedback about evening time for families. And so if there's any way to figure that out, and I see quite a few hands up. Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I completely agree with everything that you've outlined. I guess first on the staffing front, I mean, I appreciate that we are starting from a place of, $15, but I think as we've seen, $15 is just not enough to get people in the door. And so I'm hoping that, moving forward as we start looking at summer, that we can be, I guess, more ambitious, more aggressive with our wages. If that's something, if you all need some additional funding to be able to run our pools, like, please tell us, because I, will definitely share that I have heard quite a bit. I did not expect to hear as much about pools as I have in the last 6 months, but it's been a hot topic for residents in Ward 4. One, folks being frustrated about swimming lessons being canceled. I think staff has done a really good job to address that particular concern and explain what happened with the resident. But, the fact remains that it is really hard to find swimming lessons for young kids right now in the metro area. And not only is it hard to find swimming lessons in the metro area, it's hard to find swimming lessons at a time that isn't during the day when everybody's working. And so I would be really interested in how we can do a better job with balancing the need for swimming lessons and the balance and the need for open swim. Because I recognize that those are, that's really what I've seen and what I've heard from our residents is a big need. And unfortunately, I look at my own schedule and the reality is I'm not going to be able to take my kids to swimming lessons at 10:30 to noon. Like, one's in school and the other one is once she's in daycare, it's just not going to be a reality. And so I unfortunately find myself looking at Westminster and Thornton and being just kind of grumpy that I have to look outside of my own community to get what I need for my family when we have this beautiful new facility. So I guess please take that into consideration as you think about how you want to better balance your open swim and your swimming lessons. I really, again, encourage you to be more aggressive with your staff recruitment. And then the other thing that I've heard and experienced myself is that it's really cold in the cabanas and that the water in the kiddie pool area is really cold. And I'm not going to make any assumption as to why, but my son, when they were there a little while ago, was like literally shivering. And so we've got to figure out how we get that under control, because it should be a comfortable space. And I know when we've gone to Apex, which is obviously a much larger space, like it feels like you're like hanging out in a sauna in the tropics, and it's just really comfortable. So I know that there's got to be a solution for us there. That's all I've got. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you. I just would speak up here on behalf of seniors, because what I have heard mostly is people who come to do some of the programs or classes, and then they want to go sit in that warmer area, the bench area that's supposed to be warmer. And I had one person say that he was all ready to go do that, and they told him he couldn't because they were having some kind of class like at the far end of the pool, way the farthest you could be from this bench area. And so there was just a confusion, like, why couldn't I just go in and sit there? I'm not going to interfere with the class. And it could be that the staffing shortage issue, I understand that. But that's the kind of thing that I've heard where people just, want to drop in, and to use the pool, like on their schedule. And it's just doesn't seem like there's enough free time for them to do that. And then, it's probably due to all the things we just heard about. And please, this is not a criticism of staff. I know you guys are busting your buns to try to figure this out. One suggestion or a question I had anyway is, I know these positions are temporary, seasonal, part-time, what have you. But what kind of perks can we offer them? Do they get free access to the rec center while they're, working as a lifeguard? Could we give them certificates for pizza for lunch, or I don't know, just something like that.
Thank you.
And Catherine, we're always up for new suggestions. I will say they are employees. So we have seasonals during the summer, but throughout the year, we do have full-time roles as well as part-time roles. those full-time roles are fully benefited when we have a candidate that's interested in a full-time lifeguard role. It's a tough one to fill full-time, but we are absolutely in a place where if an employee is working full-time or working at that 20-hour level, that they're benefited at that level as well.
Councilmember Duran Mullica.
Yeah, so, I feel like the only thing I really have to add, I guess, would just be my personal experiences. I think the schedule that you proposed is a great step in the right direction. I do agree those evening hours are tough. So I actually went to the pool. So I'll just disclose, I'm apparently very bad at looking at the schedule for the pool before I go to the pool. I'm just like, oh, it's going to be open, right? Well, that's caught me twice now. So it was one evening, I was taking the kids, got them all packed up. We went to the pool and they're like, oh, we're closing in 5 minutes. And I'm like, what? And we went to Westminster Rec because they're open till 8. And so that's where we spent our evening. And yes, Meredith, they slept beautifully. And then the second time I arrived too early. And we had to hang out for about a half hour before the pool opened, which is tough, especially because it doesn't open till 12 on Saturdays. And so, I have nap time at 1. So, just delays the schedule. So those were my 2 experiences. I appreciate the step in the right direction. I would actually be interested in seeing, what would the pool schedule look like if you guys were fully staffed? Because that would just be kind of cool to see. But other than that, I think it's at least a good step in the right direction. I understand staffing constraints are tough because everybody's fighting with those right now. But I think, even this little change makes a difference. So I definitely appreciate that.
Councilmember Jaramillo.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My suggestion would be with recruitment. I would say possibly utilize newer forms of social media that younger generations are utilizing, such as Instagram and TikTok. Maybe we make these positions look more attractive, more fun, and by doing advertisement that are paid, or we can have some staff that are there, collect B-roll and make something look cool, and maybe that will appeal to them, because I worked positions for Northglenn and Thornton that are similar to what these positions were, as a teenager and through college. And I mean, it's, I thought there would be more interest, especially because there's a facility in one of our neighboring municipalities that's been closed for a while. So you think there would be some young people that would want to have a position that is no longer available at one of the closed facilities. Instead, go to a new place where I think it'd be a really cool place to work. Yeah, that's it. Just TikTok and Instagram. Maybe they'll like that. Maybe it'll make them think it's cool or something. I know they don't do Facebook as much.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know.
Councilmember Lukman-Hiramasa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, Councilmember Jaramillo, that's my generation, the Facebook generation. We're the older ones, harder to recruit. I would just like to echo what Mayor Pro Tem Wilford was talking about, because I've heard the same things in our ward in terms of swimming lessons being canceled last minute, and the open swim times just aren't working. And I also understand that right now it's really tough. I'm seeing the same thing even with my granddaughter's swim school right now. So I'm just looking at this, and Mayor Pro Tem Wilford mentioned it as well in terms of if you possibly need more support to offer a higher minimum wage, just because right now Wendy's, Good Times, they're offering between $17 and $19 an hour for those types of jobs. So maybe $15 an hour when it comes to youth and who are incentivized by, yeah, it's a fun job, but this pays a little bit more. So it's possible that could help. I'm not sure, because everybody is kind of struggling right now. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that I also am in support, if need be, at looking at what that minimum wage is and possibly increasing that to help recruitment. Thank you.
So Justin, I'm looking again at the current schedule versus the proposed schedule. And I'm trying to see the difference. There's a difference in formatting, which I think is interesting. So the first current schedule has like a grayed out area where it's closed. And then the proposed schedule took out the grayed out area, but the time is still technically grayed out. So it looks better. It's more appealing. But the times are the same. So I guess I was hoping for a little bit more of a proposed change based on some of the feedback. So, I mean, it looks like, I don't know, small things. It says maintaining a weekday open swim and expanding the weekend open swim was the only change. Is that true or no?
It's on the weekends. It's not weekdays at this point in time. So you see on Sundays that it is, let's see.
So that's it though, is just expanding the
Sundays
weekend open swim
earlier, and then it's Saturdays it also closes an hour later. So at 6 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. But those are the changes. And then we're committed to certainly evaluating those weeknights. And really the goal, if you're talking about an ideal schedule and fully staffed, we would be open till about 8 o'clock with open swim, but also still exploring that balance, like several of you have mentioned, with weeknight swim lessons, because there is an immense demand for that. And we curbed those back and extended open swim or expanded open swim during those afternoons and evenings. And to be very transparent with you, during those last couple hours of open swim currently on the weekdays, 4 to 6 p.m., we're getting a total of 8 people coming in the doors at all to enter the pool for open swim. So it still is that balance. And what we're striving is to do that effectively, offering the supply for that demand of swim lessons, but still, like you mentioned, having a little bit of that open swim opportunity towards the tail end of the day where people could come in after work and, maybe having already grabbed a bite to eat or snack with kids and then coming in and enjoying, that open swim time in the activity pool.
Can I ask you a question? Heather, I see your hand, but I just want to process with Justin for a minute. I've been to other facilities that use the lap pool for the swim lessons and not the recreation pool. Is there a way to do that in the afternoons on Saturdays?
I can tell you this based on my experience. Afternoons on the weekends are not a popular swim lesson time due to other activities and the like. But I can tell you that those more advanced levels can go into the lap pool. Those smaller levels based on the depth and kind of how it's structured is a little bit more challenging.
Okay. I think it is a little disappointing that main pool is interrupted so much. When it's nice to have the two separate things. And I feel like we might be underutilizing the lap pool when we could maybe use it a little more. And I just really have to echo the 10:30 to 12 Monday through Friday swim lesson. I mean, that is targeting one demographic and that's it. And I don't know that that's a Northglenn demographic as much. And so it's that was not my perspective, but as soon as Mayor Pro Tem brought it up, I was like, oh, that should not be the case. But I don't know. We were, I think as a community, so excited about the activity pool because it was something we never had. And as you can hear, it's something that residents have gone outside of the city to get. And so that's part of the frustration is that we now have it and it's super exciting and our residents want to use it. And if it's this small of access to it, it's just frustrating. So I would encourage you to try to open that up as much as possible. Councilmember Duran Malika.
Yeah, I just have actually a clarifying question, and it was based off of our conversation with talking about swim lessons. So just to get this straight, so the little people have to do their swim lessons in the rec pool, right, and not in the lap swim pool? Is that what currently happens, or?
That's currently how it's structured. There are even benches built in to allow for an easier way to instruct. Having the kids up there, they're even elevated, you know, as far as the water level goes. And it's designed in that way where you have little pockets of space to more effectively and really honestly grab a kid who may be struggling, you know, before they go down. And so the lap pool, obviously very different.
Okay, yeah, it is really different. And the only reason why I wanted to clarify that is because previously at the old rec center, there was only a lap pool, and that's where all of our lessons, I mean, that's where my kids did their lessons. So is our lap pool currently, I haven't been to our new lap pool. I should do laps, but I haven't yet. But is our new lap pool different than our old lap pool, or is it the same, you know, because it's pretty shallow, or at least it used to be. And that's how my kids did their lessons initially.
It certainly can be utilized. The depth level across the entire pool is a little bit different, but it presents different challenges. I mean, those activity pools are designed in a way to allow for a better structure of those swim lessons to take place. But once again, I mean, I hear where everybody's coming from. It is an option. Okay. It's just different considerations. Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify. I didn't know if our new pool was different.
Just because Justin wasn't here previously, I'll jump in with a little additional information. You're absolutely correct. We did run all of our lessons in the lap pool because we ran everything in the lap pool in the old facility. And as we were designing this space, like Justin was speaking to, that desire based on what feedback we're receiving from parents, what industry standards are, how others are able to provide those lessons, being able to provide a water depth that matches with kids' swimming levels and sizes is super important. So yes, we can do it in the lap pool, but there's definitely a benefit to be able to offer those lessons for the little ones in warmer water, in shallower water, that we can better meet their needs in those spaces.
Heather, did you want to weigh in?
Thank you for all the feedback. That was the intent of this conversation discussion item tonight. I just want to clarify one thing related to council protocol, because I think I'm hearing a couple different things, that there might have been the expectation that we presented a plan tonight, a schedule that addressed feedback that we've heard from council, and council has not had a formal conversation about pool hours. So what we've done is I have been relaying feedback that you've shared with me to Amanda, and Amanda in turn to Justin. But tonight's discussion was really intended to say, here's where we're at today, here's the progress, here's where we're headed. And all of the feedback that you've provided is very helpful, and we'll take that and we'll have the conversation about what would that schedule look like if we're fully staffed. But I just wanted to make sure and check in with managing council's expectation that my goal tonight wasn't to bring you a schedule that incorporated feedback from over here or over here, because really it's about you as the governing body having this discussion and hearing each other's feedback tonight. So I just wanted to clarify that piece in terms of, I've taken all the feedback that I've heard from each of you individually who have voiced concern and shared the comments, the emails from residents, and that's why we're having that discussion tonight. And that's consistent with council protocol. So I just felt it was important to elevate that and share that, which is why we still have more work to do in terms of coming back to you in my mind and sharing what does that schedule look like if we're fully staffed, what can we do to be responsive to the hours for swim lessons, and then the other pieces that you all brought up tonight. So thank you.
So Heather, I'm going to ask, because I guess I'm confused as well. I don't think it has anything to do with council protocol. I think it has to do with maybe a lack of clarity on what the request was, but to be presented with a modified schedule, gave me the impression that it was modified based on feedback. And that's what was said during the presentation. So that's why I was just wondering that the modified schedule didn't incorporate as much of the feedback as I expected. There was no expectation that the world was solved today. We definitely heard that there's a staffing concern. All we can do is provide suggestions. We can't fix that.
Right.
So I understand that the schedule is built because of some scheduling constraints as well. But I think it's important to be able to share that the changes probably aren't enough. So if there's ways to be more creative with that.
Absolutely. I wanted to make sure that I'm meeting your expectations as council. So if, say, you have a conversation with me, I can relay that conversation, that information and feedback to Amanda. But at a certain point with certain level of feedback, I need to be having a discussion with all of you, and staff needs to hear that as a collective group, and really to check in and make sure that council's all in agreement that we move forward in a certain direction. That's the protocol piece that I just wanted to make sure we're managing expectations on. So does that make sense?
What you're saying makes sense. I just don't think it has anything to do with protocols, but it's fine. I think you brought the idea forward because you heard from quite a few council members that this was a concern. I think the presentation gave me the impression that it was going to be more. So it's fine.
Okay.
It is what it is. And it looks like there's new ideas for next steps. And hopefully it'll get better, because this has also, as Mayor Pro Tem said, it has become the number one thing that I get emails and phone calls and have conversations with residents about. It's really nice, but I can't use it. And so I'm frustrated. And it's very easy because every industry is understaffed. So it's easy right now to say, you know what, it's a staffing situation. I'm just worried that it's not going to get better for the summer. So if you have, and actually just I don't know, our pool doesn't have an outside component to it. I feel like our biggest season, our hot season, is going to be when the summer pools are closed, and that's, kids don't have a place to go. And so they like to swim all winter long. So hopefully we can figure out that staffing piece. And then I think if we can utilize the lap pool for more, that would be awesome. Yeah. Why is fused water fitness in the activity pool? Does it have to be shallow?
Typically, most participants need a shallow area where they can stand and touch with their feet.
Okay.
That's why you see most of that water-based fitness piece in the activity pool.
I see that.
There is a temperature difference between the pools as well, and that plays a role, particularly with whether it be our fitness, water fitness class, or those where we have some older participants that need that warm water environment.
Oh, I thought Jenny said it was cold.
And I do want to share, I mean, we hear the feedback and we thank you for it immensely. It's important to us. We're committed to working towards improving this schedule to best meet the needs of our community. Balancing swim lessons, open swim, lap swim, all of those pieces we've identified. So definitely thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Duran Malika.
One other thing, and I know maybe in the future, as our hours start getting better, or maybe this is something that we think about later on, do we have free days in Northglenn for the rec center? So people could, if you haven't tried the pool yet, come and check it out. I just thought about that. And then maybe if we needed to get more people in and just even to see the facility, it'd be kind of cool to have some free days every once in a while. I mean, the zoo has free days. I like free days, but I don't know. Parents are always looking for free stuff too.
Appreciate the suggestion. We've done them at the outdoor pool, but never at the indoor pool. So it's an opportunity. And they are very popular when we've done them at the outdoor pool.
That is a good point. Anybody else want to weigh in? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I think we're done for the evening. Are there any other items for council? No. I had a question based on a small conversation we were having at the start of tonight's meeting. Would council support moving the discussion item regarding returning to in-person meetings from the 28th to the 14th? So if the discussion happens on the 14th, we might be able to go back to in-person by the 28th? Or do you want to leave it the way it is and finish February? Nobody knows. We were talking about the numbers look really great. So like really, really great, which is nice. Councilmember Walker.
I'd support moving up the discussion, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Lukman-Hiramasa.
I also support moving up the discussion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Same.
Okay. Yes. Is that what you were going to say, Julie? Yeah. Okay. All right. So Heather, if you could move that discussion item from the 28th to the 14th, and then that'll be great. All right.
Will do. Thanks.
Thanks. We'll have a good evening. We are now adjourned.